Morning, good afternoon for everyone who's joining us on live stream. Welcome. And as Warren mentioned in his introduction, this is a part of a series of talks on the on realizing the Four Noble Truths. And so, um, if you haven't heard the previous talk, it will be helpful. It will help you understand why I'm talking what I'm talking about today also. But I hope this talk, if you haven't heard previous talks, will still be uh, clear and useful for your practice. And in the previous talks, I talked about the importance of understanding the Four Noble Truths and also the importance of recognizing vexations, recognizing how suffering, dukkha, is the coming together of whatever is happening in the present moment with our very entrenched habits of reacting with vexations, vexations like craving and aversion. And doing so is the very beginning of what Master Sheng Yen called the path to actualization of the Buddha's teachings. We need to start with understanding the Four Noble Truths and also the how to recognize vexations. And how do we do that? It is by cultivating moment to moment clear awareness of thoughts and feelings that arise as we interact with the world, people around us, objects that we encounter, so that we can recognize our very entrenched habitual reactivities to what's going on, so that we can see for ourselves, okay, yes, that is how uh, these habits of vexations uh, triggered. And when they do, there's suffering. That is what the Buddha meant by suffering being the coming together of whatever is happening in the present moment and vexation. So we practice noticing that when we remember to practice and not give rise to our habitual reactivity with reacting to the present moment with vexation, ah, that's the moment as it is. No suffering, or at least we suffer less. Many of you had shared with me your experience of that. So you can see for yourself what the Buddha was talking about. You say, oh, Buddha, I know what you're talking about now. That suffering is not an independently, inherently existing entity. We do not need to turn suffering, dukkha, into our enemy and trying to get rid of it or hating it, having this negative relationship with it, but to see it clearly as it is, that it too, like everything, is empty of an independently, inherently existing self. And so it is not necessary to hate to give rise to aversion to suffering. And as you can see, when we do, we're just generating more suffering. We practice remembering that every moment is the coming together of causes and conditions. And in the last talk I gave last month, I focused on talking about how the present moment is conditioned by past moments to as a way to help us see how what we mean by every moment is brand new, but it's not random. That it is conditioned by our previous actions, so that we can take responsibility for what's going on in the present moments, but also see that it's not fixed already, and we can cultivate, we can engage in the practice to mitigate the effect of past actions. And remembering that every moment is brand new that it is the coming together of causes and conditions, that too, it too is empty of self, it's impermanent. That when we can remember that, we are less prone to react to what's going on in the present moment with vexation, because we can see that, oh, it is not an independently existing fixed entity. There's no need to grasp, to activate our habit of craving for more. We are able to see that, oh, this is what's going on, and be fully present with it, appreciate the coming together of causes and conditions, knowing very well that it is a flow, that grasping for it will only lead to suffering and discontent. Of course, there's no need to hate or reject what is going on either, because remembering that it is impermanent, we can see what is going on clearly. And so that we're not saying that we just wait for it to go away. We stay with what's going on so that we can cultivate this clarity to see um, what is needed. And recognize our causes and conditions to see if there's something we can do that is appropriate. Perhaps if it's someone, if it's a situation where someone is uh, in misery, is there something we can do to help them, help bring joy to them? And when we do not habitually react to the present moment with vexation, when vexations don't arise, suffering ceases. And that's the Buddha's teachings. And when we practice remembering this, we are cultivating right view, um, one very important component of the path, the Eightfold Path. Right view here refers to the view that is in accordance with wisdom and compassion, that leads us to be free from suffering. Right view here referring to every moment, remembering that every moment is brand new, that every moment the coming together of causes and conditions, and also it's conditioned by past moments, law of cause and effect. And this cultivation of recognizing vexations and understanding the true meaning of Four Noble Truths that I've been talking about is the process of cultivating right view. And that is what Master Cheng Yen referred to as the path of accumulation, the first step on the path to actualizing the Buddha's teachings. So that's why I expended so much time to talk about this. And it is not something we just hear like, oh, okay, I agree with the Four Noble Truth and just kind of forget about it. That is an integral part of our practice. And the second part of this path to actualization that Master Sheng Yen talk about is what he called path of seeing. It's referring to how when we realize by direct experience emptiness, the true nature of existence, that one is able to drop wrong view. Like wrong view referring to believing that um, things have independent, inherent existence, that they are permanent. There is an independently existing like entity or essence of self to it. That is a very common. Well, actually, we all have that erroneous view, and the cultivation of being with the present moment as it is, moment to moment, allow us to realize that is not the case, and how we can realize emptiness, realizing that dukkha, whatever thing that's happening in the present moment, as well as vexation, what are they experience as vexation, they are all they all the coming together of causes and conditions, and thus empty of self. And so when we are able to realize the right view, the wrong view is dropped. And Master Sheng Yen referred to this wrong view as one of the 6 root vexations. And that's the first one that we can drop. And so the way he talked about the path of actualization is after realizing right view, then we can go about the third stage of the practice, the path of, he called that the path of practice. That's the third of the um, four parts on the path to actualization. The path of practice refers to subduing the remaining root vexations. What are the remaining 5 root vexations? He referred to them as these emotional afflictions. So I think it's helpful for us to distinguish between these 2 kinds of vexations. The vexation of wrong view, something is what I just talked about. We can by directly experiencing, realizing the nature of emptiness, we can drop that wrong view. And meaning we finally have correct understanding of the true nature of emptiness, not conceptually, but we truly see that. However, that does not mean that all the vexations are gone. Why is that? This points to the fact that the other 5 root vexations are called emotional afflictions, points to the fact that even when we understand and realize right view, realize that the true nature of existence, that all is the coming together of causes and conditions and empty, we still feel compelled to react to the present moment with vexations, or these vexations, craving, aversion, arrogance, doubt, also ignorance, even when we know, we still have this very entrenched habits of forgetting emptiness. We want to see that things are permanent, even though we have already dropped that wrong view. So the referring to these vexations, these 5 root vexations, as emotional affliction, points to the fact that they are not something that we can just um, drop by understanding them conceptually. And this is why we need to engage in the practice to really see for ourselves, moment to moment, cultivating this clear awareness to see how we do feel compelled to cling and want more of what we like. And when we encounter something that we habitually feel an aversion to, we reject or hate what we don't like. That is, even though we know better, we have this emotional reaction. And how even with a right view, we need to go through the process that Master Sheng Yen referred to as the path of practice to slowly to recognize, so that we can release these emotional affliction, these very entrenched habitual reactivity. So in this talk, what I like to do is to take some time to go over one of these root vexations, what the Buddha referred to as the emotional affliction of craving. You see that in the sutra. That's the emotional affliction that the Buddha talked about the most, craving. And to practice to practice recognizing how it's being triggered and conditioned by sensory experience. So this craving, they are not this self independently existing thing in us. It's like it shows up, it gets triggered when we encounter, when we experience sensory experiences. And and also to practice to not let the craving that is triggered by sensory experience to overwhelm us. So now the this in this talk I will draw on a sutra from the Majjhima Nikaya called the Longer Discourse of the Ending of Craving, um, to share with you how the Buddha talked about craving, how to protect our sense faculty. And here I will, you hear that I focus on sight, but really we need to think about all the sensory faculties that we experience throughout the day. So sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and also thoughts. And I'm talking about sight also, partly because recently I read about some piece of uh, research that refers to to the finding that half of the brain's resources is used on vision. So when we have like these different sense faculty, like we are very heavily invested in vision, and so that means that a lot of our energy is expended on it, and perhaps if we can more readily relate to experience of sight, and also we can see how it provides a lot of opportunity for us to practice with it. So in this sutra, when the Buddha talked about the sense faculty, the experience of sight, what was his advice? He said, he quote, "Don't get caught up in the features and details." Hmm, what does that mean? So here, like you need to read this quite carefully. So don't get caught up in the features and details. It does not mean not to pay any attention to the features or details. Right? It does not mean that. And it also does not mean ignoring the features and details. And it's pointing to the fact that we actually can uh, admire the beauty of something and appreciate the causes and conditions that come together that to manifest in this moment of our experience that is the sight. Right? So this reminds me of one time that my husband and I went to an exhibit of Japanese art, and we saw a very huge. It's like a screen that will like a room divider kind of screen, and so, with a very beautiful image on it. And at first, we thought it was a painting, and then when we look closer, we realized that it was an embroidery. The entire screen was done stitch by stitch of embroidery. And it was an incredible piece of artwork. And we took a lot of time to really look at the stitches um, uh, carefully. So looking at the features and details of the artwork, right? And and notice how the image changes. Admire how the image changes when we look at it from different angles because the light's hitting the threads differently, showing different shades of the color. And Uh, I remember that it was a very joyful experience. It brought a lot of joy to our heart to encounter that artwork. Um, Largely, it was because it filled us with gratitude for the opportunity to see uh, this amazing artwork and a lot of admiration for the patience uh, and of course the workmanship of the artist who put this together, and very grateful for everyone who made the exhibit possible. I feel very blessed. And I want to share this example to illustrate that sensory experience does not need to bring suffering. And so if you have that idea in your mind, uh, we are born with this body, we have the sense faculty, and as we interact with the world, there will be sensory experiences. But it does not mean they have to bring suffering. It has to do with how we go about engaging with the world. And so, as you can see, when the sensory experience can bring a lot of joy, and maybe also the feeling of gratitude may move us to want to, for example, offer donation to support this museum's work so that other people can also enjoy these beautiful artwork. Right? So here, what I want to emphasize is that it's not about avoiding avoiding uh, exposure to what is beautiful and what delights our hearts. Here is talking about don't get caught up. Don't get caught up. Um, and what does it what does it mean? It's like when because we're not getting caught up so that we don't let quote unskilled qualities of covetousness and displeasure unquote become overwhelming. That is what the Buddha was talking about. So here is pointing to the fact that this we have with this very entrenched habitual reactivity that uh, when we encounter a sensory experience that we find that we like, that we find pleasant, um, there's this very entrenched habit of craving for more. And so I like to explain, like I said, use the example of sight to explain this in detail. And for some of you, you might find sight is your key thing, but like some of you, maybe it's smelling, tasting, tactile sensation, thoughts, and you can see that they apply to other sensory experience as well. So how do we get caught up and and that and generate unskilled qualities of covetousness that overwhelm us? Well, one way, see if you recognize this, is that when we encounter sites that we really like, and we get upset and agitated when it's time to leave. Like we like it so much when it's time to part with a pleasant sensory experience. Like we just get mad, we get upset, we get agitated. Right? It's an emotional affliction. Like you can tell yourself, oh, it's impermanent. It's like it doesn't matter. You just get upset. That's why it's an emotional affliction. Right? And this and it has to do with like our getting so caught up with this sensory experience That's like maybe it's like you are mesmerized by it, and you just like it's almost like you're under a spell. It's like like you get so mesmerized by this pleasant sensation, you just get upset and forget that it's impermanent, and we can't stay here forever. And then you will and then we get upset and agitated when it's time to part with it or to stop. And this reminds me of my nephew when they were uh, uh, little young children, um, how they will have 20 minutes of TV time every day. And then so when they were watching their favorite cartoon show, they were like so happy and they were like so caught up in it, and but then it's time's up, like turn on TV, and then they get all like it's like they get upset and agitated, and so of course like forget all about the happiness that they experienced during the show, and it's now just suffering and crying and all that stuff. And we think, yeah, kids, but we do that too, right? We just maybe don't do it like as visibly. And so we practice recognizing how these emotional afflictions show up. So maybe like for some of us now is springtime. Maybe you can relate to this. That maybe you have done a lot of work to plant bulbs and flowers in your yard, in your garden, and it's like love the sight of blooming flowers in the garden and in the yard. And maybe, I don't know how the weather's been like in where you live, but like where we are, we have these storms, and then the rain, the heavy rain beat the flower up, and then it's like they're gone. And so and then the wind they blow away the flowers, and then if you here in the Northeast, they disappear because they got eaten by deer. So they're gone. Like, and so like we and like we love them so much, enjoy the sight so much, and we forget emptiness, get caught up by it. Then we get upset and agitated when we discover that the flowers are gone. And so you've that's our experience. We can recognize, oh, it's because we forget impermanence, and maybe like we just didn't even really pay that much attention when the flowers were blooming because we assumed it will be there tomorrow. It will be there forever. We didn't even pay it any mind. And then we get very upset when it's gone. Or this is actually a true story. Like when we love the view from our house. It's like, oh, there are all these woods, like this is like a thing, like this is like a multiple people story. Like so someone told me how upset it was when she lost that view because her neighbors cut down the trees. It's like that was my view, and then they cut down the tree. Um, or when the neighbor decided to put to put a fence that's not good looking, and so that's like now your view is gone. And there's some other person like really enjoy the view out of their backyard, this open space, and then the neighbor sold the property to someone who decided to build a big building there, and then so no more open view. So um upsetting, upsetting, and when we get upset and agitated because we forget that every moment is the coming together of causes and conditions. And even when we know that conceptually, still the emotional affliction. And this displeasure, quote, displeasure of parting with what we love so much can compel us. It's not just an emotional reaction. It is so powerful that it can compel us to act out our vexation that can result in our engaging in actions that cause harm to others. So, for example, like you so upset that the deer ate your flower that you give rise to hatred to these wildlife. They're just looking for food, but like we started a negative, a really hateful relationship with them. And I've heard people talking about how they wage war against, deer or um, squirrel in their yard, and this is why upholding precept is so important. These precepts, in this case, the precept of refraining from killing, protect us from becoming overwhelmed with hatred in our heart in moments like this because of our craving for what we love. So this precept of not killing help protect us from um, uh, not going overboard. Like like maybe you would do things to keep the deer away instead of trying to kill them or poison them, right? Or like if you are very upset about losing your beautiful view, the precept of not killing will protect you from not trying to kill your neighbor. But like you notice that there is this agitation. And besides the precepts, this is also an opportunity to practice remembering right view, remembering that every moment is the coming together of causes and conditions. And also the importance of using our meditative practice to stabilize the mind so that when these emotional reactivity, affectual reactivity, this emotional affliction of craving, aversion, the compulsion to crave for more of what we like and hating it when we parting from it, um, that we do not feel it, we do not act them out, they do not become overwhelming. And some of you may be like, nah, I don't get upset or agitated. Well, how about the way this vexation show is like you crave to um, go back, uh, crave for more of that sensory experience. When it's no longer here, you crave to return to that sensory experience. Okay? So after you separate from it, you cannot stop thinking about it. You are um, scheming ways to go back to to that situation, to experience more of it, more. And so in other words, we become obsessed with this sensory experience. And so those of you who have experienced that, it will like you're here, but like you keep thinking about how I can get back there, how I want more of that. And at the same time, what is in the present moment feels totally unsatisfactory, no good. Like, because it's not that wonderful experience. And here is the classic definition of dukkha. Whatever is happening in the present moment, not good enough because it's not that experience. And so this craving to return to the sensory experience that we like and love, well, some of you may remember experiencing this and maybe are currently experiencing this, is that you met someone you really like for whatever reason, maybe that person is very beautiful and you become infatuated with it. Can't stop craving for the time to see this person again. We're talking about sight. Right? So if you have experienced that or currently experiencing it, you will notice is this the what we call like maybe you're falling in love with someone you think, and it is the torturous aspect of the falling in love process. And so of course, same thing again, whoever is with you now, like they're not good enough. That's not the person you want to be with. And even this is someone who is uh, being very kind to you, doing a lot for you. Like we don't see it, we ignore that, we take it for granted. And also, the interesting thing is, we're so infatuated uh, with with our idea of the person that we want to see again. Um, when we see that person, we we notice that they're not as perfect as we imagine, because we are actually not present with that person. We are seeing our perfect ideal notion of that person in our mind, and even when we actually see that person, we may feel disappointed and suffer. And so here we can see how craving leads to suffering. Or when maybe this you don't recognize this, you don't relate to that. Maybe when we spend time in a place, um, maybe when we visit people who live in a very nice place, um, and we really love it. Maybe like they have a very nice home, or maybe they have very nice scenery, live in a very nice environment. And so all things are impermanent. And then, of course, because you don't live there and you have to go home. And so when you go home, you keep trying to figure out a way how you can go back there. So some people, it may be your favorite vacation spot. Right? So, or it may even be your vacation, your own home. Like that's like a vacation home, but like it's very out of the way. You can't live there because you have work. You just keep thinking about it. How like, so maybe I can move there. Maybe all that stuff. And then suddenly, first of all, suddenly your own home is not good enough. Like everything you look, no good. Or the town you live in, not good enough. And so, but you realize that it's actually not practical to move there, or like to visit, to go to spend a lot of time there or visit there very frequently. So you notice this, the suffering and has to do with getting caught up with our sensory experience, and, and allowing allowing this unskillful quality of covetousness overwhelm us. Overwhelm us. Like, it's nice that you like it, but like it's like this covetousness becomes overwhelming. You become obsessed and just think about all you think about is how to get back there. And understanding this, at least conceptually, um, can help us recognize that it is not the sensory experience of seeing beautiful um, or pleasant view that's causing suffering. It is also not that which is keeping us from going back there that is causing our suffering, although that might be what you think. It's like you start resenting your spouse for having this job that keeps you from living in that beautiful place. But that is not what is causing suffering. It is the habitual reactivity of craving for more of what we like, and allowing this covetousness to become overwhelming that's causing suffering. When we recognize this, then we can see it clearly and practice dropping, dropping that craving. Release that, not feed it, not feel it. And now, some of you may say, "Well, it's not that easy. It's like very hard." Like actually, you're right. Um, some people may experience this craving when it's triggered by being exposed to something we like. They may experience it so strongly that it feels like an addiction, like you have just like completely lost control over yourself. And in the sutra, Buddha talked about how these sensual stimulation, which are likable. I want to use say these quote these words like some of you may be able to relate to it. Likable, desirable, agreeable, pleasant, sensual, and I like this one, arousing. Like it's like, wow, it's like arouses. Wow. So it's not just like, oh, it's nice. It's like it just like it's like it just hooks you and arouses you. And and when that's the case, we just automatically give rise to this habitual reactivity of favoring it and approving, welcoming, and keep clinging to it. And the Buddha, this is the different part of the 12 nidanas that ends in a mass, what he called a mass of suffering. Right? So I want to talk about this sort of experience of feeling some sensual stimulation that is arousing. Right? This reminds me of someone I talked to recently. It was very interesting, who described her experience of being addicted to something that she really liked and discovering that she said that many years ago, that was the very first time she drank Coca-Cola, so, and she said that um she really, really liked it. And then her face lit up talking about how amazing that sensation of that taste that made her feel was like. So this is a good example of this arousing that the Buddha was talking about. And and that she couldn't stop thinking about it after she drank it, that she just couldn't wait to drink a Coke again. That sounded like addict, uh, some kind of addiction, right? And so she could still recall powerful, how powerful that that craving was, and she could see that she was getting addicted to it, like so. And also like you can see like this arousal, and then the thought of wanting to go back there, can't wait to go back and re-experience it, thought after thought after thought. And but she has a lot of wisdom. She like realized like this is kind of scary, and she actually stopped drinking that, like did not touch it for many years. And the reason why she was sharing this story with me was that she's like, well, maybe, like maybe let me try again. And then she could feel the arousal again. And so here I want to share the importance of the cultivating the wisdom of regulating our exposure to sensual stimulation that are particularly arousing. Here, like really addictive. We know that it's addictive, right? So here I'm pointing to the fact that when we've been talking about sensory stimulation, like of sight, also sound, smell, taste, touch, thoughts. Um, Again, they too are conditioned. They are the coming together of what coming together, the contact of sense faculty and sense object. Okay? And we we have our sense faculty. We have different sensitivity in our sense faculty. Some people are very easily aroused by beautiful sight, some by sound, some by tactile sensations. So, and also, I read recently that some people have like there's that brain chemistry or the physiochemistry that is much more prone to what we call addiction um, than others. So for these folks, the arousal from pleasant sensation um, is much more powerful, and when they come into contact with these sensory experience, the brain's flooded with these chemical that becomes overwhelming, and so it will be experienced as a more uncontrollable craving that overwhelms us. And some people don't have that kind of chemical reaction, and as strongly. So if you are that, then I'm mentioning this so that we can understand that some people it's not so easy to just like drop something. It's and if that like that's the case with you, that like there's that strong reaction because of your physiochemistry. It's not because you're bad. It's just like that's your causes and conditions. That's the makeup of your sense faculty. And so I don't. Someone in the audience may have much more detailed understanding of this. That like things like this, there is around what I read here is around 10% of people have this what we call like a brain that's very prone to addiction, and most of us, I think 80% of us, like us, are mixed. You will feel this arousal and give rise to this strong craving, but not to the extent that it feels completely uncontrollable. Right? But still, there is this tendency um, to want to enjoy the sensations that we like again. And the Buddha's teaching point to us that like, okay, this is not something uh, that is a fixed characteristic of us. It is the coming together of causes and conditions, and that's why we can practice to release them. And how do we do that? We can cultivate moment to moment clear awareness of our sensory experience to see for ourselves moment to moment how this process of um, liking or getting arousing or arousal unfolds. And if we discover that certain sense objects is generating very powerful urges, very powerful arousal, then to remember to give rise to wisdom, to refrain from contact, to so that we do not get sucked into that uh, uh, the cycle of arousal and having these covetousness overwhelm us. Right? So, for example, very addictive drugs, or maybe like alcohol, especially people who have the genetic predisposition to alcohol addiction, then it would be wise to refrain from uh, uh, from exposure to that. And this is another instance when the precepts of not using intoxicants protect us protect us in our practice, protects us from letting our sensory faculty bless our for getting overwhelmed by these unskillful qualities. And of course, and of course, in this day and age, we encounter a lot of products that have been meticulously engineered to be addictive. And um, a few months ago, um, we we purchased a particular kind of potatoes. Like it has like so many different ingredients, and my husband who tasted it reported to me how amazing it is. And looking at the ingredient, it was sort of like a very meticulously engineered blend of all kinds of uh, rice flour and potato and everything, and to create a certain taste, certain degree of like umami and crispiness and taste, that just kind of trigger every single nerve cells in your brain to want more, um, so that you will just eat the whole thing, even though you were planning to just eat three pieces. And so, which was, of course, the goal because they want you to buy more and so that they can make more money. Like understanding that some sense objects are designed to addict, it's important so that we can apply our wisdom to uh, mitigate exposure, right? So you can if you know you're completely addicted to chips, maybe you can not buy them. And now, like sometimes it does not work. It's like if you really like them and then you just don't let yourself have any chips, and then when you encounter them, you just eat the whole bag, right? You have a lot of pent up like a desire. So maybe like to be skillful, to not let these unhelpful habits completely overwhelm us. So for example, maybe you can have chips, but like maybe not make them visible. Don't put it like right in front of you on your countertop so that you like can like grab it see it all the time. And maybe to sort of like create some barrier to access. These two things are actually something I learned recently from a book about cultivating helpful habits and how to like make unhelpful habits like more like less desirable. So now we've been talking about food, but of course, like many people are nowadays. What I've heard from a lot of people, one of the number one addiction is their phone. Like people are addicted to their phone. And recently at a retreats, a lot of retreatants told me that they're so happy to be free from their phone because the retreat center now liberate them from their phone upon arrival. And so the interesting thing is that because like they can't control themselves when they're home when they have the phone back, right? So it's telling you how addictive this sense object is. Now the thing is, unlike potato chips, you cannot not buy them. Like you're gonna have like because we nowadays we gonna have our phone with us, and so then we can use wisdom to regulate, to mitigate exposure. For example, to make the addictive apps less visible, to bury it over in layers and layers of like folders or put it like in the 10th page of your home screen or something. And so this is like swipe through, and then while you're swiping through all those pages, you can like, oh, like I'm like I'm trying to get to this thing I'm really addicted to. Maybe you can catch yourself and stop. And also like to like make it hard to access, like you log out. So every time you have to open the app, you have to like log in again. And and then you give yourself time to see that you are activating your addiction. And so um Or so when you notice you have this craving, this activated, you reaching for the phone, or you're like swiping through the pages to get to that app you're addicted to, you can catch yourself and drop it, release it. You don't need to beat yourself up for doing that, but like you can, I don't need to do that. And the same thing, like um, if you're a shopaholic, like maybe the app you need to bury is your the shopping app. Here, here, what we're talking about is to see for ourselves that succumbing to and acting out the craving that may, when it shows up, may seem to like may give us the promise of bringing us happiness, and maybe the moment we get with maybe need happiness, but pay attention to how it leads to suffering. And so that we can this content is right. Remember to choose the practice to so that when we do not feed it and act it out, then we are not bringing together the causes and conditions of suffering. And this is why meditative practice of cultivating moment to moment clear awareness is crucial. Just understanding it conceptually is not enough. So it is not about being uh like very harsh with ourselves, like engaging in this kind of very harsh asceticism, like depriving us of all the things that we like. Um, and because that can backfire, it can inadvertently feel desired. It is about wisely refraining from um, what we notice is highly addictive sense objects, and so that we can regulate this desire. And this is how we cannot let covetousness and displeasure become overwhelming. We notice these craving and desire, and we can stop, stop feeling them, feeding them, and not be pushed around by this compulsion. And here I also want to talk about the uh, what the Buddha talked about, that like when we encounter sense objects that we like, right? It's like we are being quote so full of favoring and opposing, picking and choosing, and then it triggers this feeling of approval, approving, welcoming, and keep clinging to it. And here is he's talking about really the very subtle trend habits of that is the process of identifying identifying with this sensory experience as self. Like we through the succession of favoring and approving and clinging, like basically we like this is when we encounter this sense object, like this is totally me, like this me, this is part of me, like so it can be some like a jacket you like, or a car, or a phone, or you hear a song. um this emotional habit of emotional affliction of favoring, like I love it, and approving, it's like who's approving me, it is because it's like part of it's like part of me, and clinging to it, turning it into part of who you are, thought after thought after thought. And we feel it as I have to have it, have to have it. Right? And this and we act out this compulsion, like wanting to possess it, maybe buying it, or like trying to keep it, even though that is not ours. Or if it's something we can't afford to buy, maybe we just take it. We call it stealing. So that is why the precepts of not stealing is there to protect us from falling prey to being overwhelmed by this covetousness. Right? And also, we'll notice that if we can't keep it, anger and hatred arises, this ill will. And when we experience that, we're prone to act out to cause harm to others. And you can see how quickly we can engage in we can engage in the generation process and causing harm. It is why it's helpful to remember that every moment is becoming, even when belongs to us, that's in our possession. We need to remember that that is a yes legal ownership. Remembering that actually that is temporary, that is the coming together of causes and conditions. That it is now in my care, in my possession, and when causes and conditions change, that will no longer be the case. So this is the case with material possession. So we all have experienced that things that's in our possession, that may be something we like a lot, maybe our very favorite piece of clothing, or like you, especially when you get a car, it's like, oh, you love it so much, you want to keep it like that forever. But it's impermanent. Like, of course, like it can break, it can be lost, it can be destroyed, damaged by natural or human forces, and not just material possession. Things, other things that we believe it's in our possession, that's ours, mine. Like things like such as like people in our life, we have a possessive relationship with our a relationship, intangible things like a job, a community that we uh, did a lot of work to cultivate and create, or like a company, an organization. The idea that it is mine is a habitual thought that arises when we forget emptiness, emotional affliction of ignorance. Forget that every moment is the coming together of causes and conditions. When we remember emptiness, then we can correctly see that this is in my possession, this is in my care now because of causes and conditions. And so it is your responsibility to take good care of it, um, because causes and conditions put it in your care so that like we can make good use of it, maybe to bring benefits to sentient being, and sentient being include ourselves also, but as everyone. Right? So we take good care of maybe material possession, or like a job or a community that is in our care for everyone. And knowing very clearly that when causes and conditions change, and it's such that someone else would take possession, then remember impermanence, so that we do not fall prey to the habitual reactivity of aversion, giving rise to hatred and cause suffering. Um, this reminds me of an example of someone uh, went to stay at their family's visit the family and to stay at their family's apartment. And they had they somehow they had a lot of they were asked to keep possession of a fair amount of cash, and they had jewelry there. And one day when they were out, the apartment was burglarized, and so they took everything, jewelry, like huge amount of cash. And so they told me that how they well remember causes and conditions, and it was like, okay, it was unfortunate that they lost the jewelry. Part of it include their wedding ring and stuff, but remembering these causes and conditions, so like they didn't give rise to anger and hatred, but they did what they needed, to file the police report, answer the police questions, and their response first did not cause suffering for themselves, also did not make the family member feel bad because they felt very bad for like the place being burglarized and then they losing their possession, but it helped them not feel so terrible. And another example that comes to mind with this is I someone told me recently that he got laid off from his job, got laid off from his job, and so but remembering the practice, the remembering impermanence, what he did was, instead of getting upset, mad at the supervisor, he thanked the supervisor for opportunities, and working there and learning what he did. And instead of reacting with hatred and aversion and acting out of ill will, right? Instead, wouldn't change the fact that he's laid off, but like generate unnecessary suffering. And so this comes from the practice of remembering emptiness, remembering impermanence, so that we are able to appreciate what we have when we have them. And then when it's time to change, causes and conditions change, we remember not to react with aversion. So the Buddha taught us the importance of practicing restraint in this sutra to protect our sense faculty. So again, it is not about being harsh on ourselves, engaging in unnecessary depriving of our needs. And but it's also about paying attention not to indulge in unrestrained sensory pleasure. Right? Um, many of you may remember hearing Shifu's teachings, which I um, roughly translate here as, what we need is not much, but what we want and desire is plenty. In fact, endless. Right? If we don't practice restraint. So how do we practice restraint if it's not some kind of harsh asceticism, just like nothing, like deprive ourselves of everything? So that's not what we talk about. How do we practice restraint? Cultivate clear awareness, moment to moment clear awareness. That's why meditative practice is so important. It's like here, like knowing clearly, knowing clearly, what am I doing? What am I doing now? Am I compulsively acting out habits of craving for more, clinging to it, identifying it, thinking that it's mine? This is me. That lead us to, for example, actions like buying what we don't need or what we can't afford, right? Or um, engaging in actions like blindly pursuing more and more for maybe fame, recognition, status, and wealth, to feed our ego, to feed our um, sense of self-aggrandizement, self-importance. Right? In the process, hurting people in our life, like justify using them to feed our ambition, or and ignoring our loved one while we are blindly pursuing these things. We can also practice cultivating moment to moment clear awareness to ask if I am practicing restraint, or am I letting covetousness become overwhelming and take over to control us? Right? So, uh, so for example, as we eat something that we enjoy, like we're talking about potato chips, it can be like ice cream, whatever is your favorite, right? So what we can do is cultivate clear awareness, being fully present. Then while we are eating it, we fully appreciate every bite, and um, and it is this um, joy and happiness that is um, not about feeling some kind of thirst or craving, but it's like a fully this full presence that allows us to feel content, so that we don't give rise to um, these unrestrained craving, and not so that we do not give rise to more suffering. This reminds me of this story of Master Shen Yan. He wrote about it, I can't remember which book. Talk about how one time he had a disciple who brought him these really delicious grapes. So he ate these grapes and said that these grapes are very delicious. And so he's pointing to the fact that, yeah, it's perfectly, when you are present with what you are eating, you can really enjoy it, right? Versus mindless eating. You don't really know what you are eating. And then this disciple, but like, oh, Shiva really like this. So he like, every time brought tons of these grapes to him. And so Master Shen Yuan, why do you keep bringing these so many grapes? And then the disciple said, oh, because you like them. You should like them. It's like, well, I enjoy them does not mean that I need more. Does not mean that. Like, here is pointing to the fact that we can enjoy, appreciate sensory experience, but it does not mean that we have to let that become overwhelming and feed the craving more, more. This is good. We enjoy it, and when it's done, it's contentment, not suffering. So when we notice this emotional affliction of craving showing up, like it does not mean that like, oh no, like I failed. It's like, oh, it's showing up. Ah, no problem. But it does not mean that I have to act on it and go and get more, buy more, try to go back to experience more of it. We can just release it by remembering that the urge and compulsion that promises happiness is also empty. We don't need to believe it and act on it. And we can practice this. We can practice this. And you can see that like these we have a lot of opportunities to practice, right? So we have these a lot of opportunities to encounter sensory stimulation, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, thoughts. And so um, to help us remember right view, we can, the Buddha encourage us to connect with learned friends. Some of you may have read about that, referring to practitioners of the Dharma, like other people who also practice, like all of us here, um, so that we can remind each other of the practice and practice to and support each other. And it also helps us remember to exercise discernment, to notice that if there are unhelpful influences in our life, like they are the opposite of these learned friends, right? They um they might be like people in our life, maybe family or friends, coworkers, or not just that. Nowadays, we are exposed to a lot of things that we watch or listen to on these various form of media and read. What like they and they are unhelpful because they encourage unrestrained craving. They encourage and incite hatred and ill will, so that they are fueling these emotional afflictions in us. Then, when we notice they are these unhelpful influences, we can exercise wisdom to reduce exposure. So here I'm pointing to the practice of protecting our faculty, sense faculty, especially faculty of mind. And so you may notice that there are ideas that you like, and have the emotional reactions like, oh, that's like, I love this idea, approve it, and cling to it, right? And identify it. That's me. That's my idea, my viewpoint. I agree with. Of course, the opposite is I hate, I disagree with that. Like most commonly nowadays is look, uh, uh, there are all kind of things out there. Even about news. So, um, you encounter ideas that you oppose will towards others, perpetuates this sense of righteousness, uh, uh, and we that these instances may kind of view perpetuate emotional affliction. And then like, oh, we do, we feel compelled, like read and listen more, and that to be more prone to them out after these speech and bodily action and cause harm. Protect the mind faculty. We we can uh, practice what the Buddha had been um, reminding us, to protect the mind faculty by practicing restraint. It does not mean avoiding the news entirely, right? Because we still, it's helpful to stay informed. But we may notice that there, the certain kind of uh, uh, reports, we don't need to keep listening or read more of that, uh, because they may not really be adding more information. We are addicted to more of that to feed the emotional affliction of craving and ill will in our mind because of our identifying to certain viewpoint or our hatred of certain viewpoints. So again, here it's an opportunity for us to practice cultivating clear awareness while as we like want to read and listen to more and more. It's like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Am I feeding, feeling, craving, aversion? And here it's very important to remember that our mind is very powerful And so it is not about avoiding thoughts, just like not allowing any exposure to sensory stimuli to our mind faculty. It is about making skillful use of the mind faculty. First, by um, protecting it from unhelpful, unhelpful stimuli, unhelpful influences that fill it, overwhelm it with hatred and craving, so that we can make good use of it to learn useful things, such as learn useful knowledge and learn how to make good use of them. Like, for example, how to organize a team that cultivate harmony and kindness among each other, or like people spend a lot of time to go and learn the intricate details of how a disease works, and so that they can cure them. But then we can make good use of our mental mind faculty to bring benefit to sentient beings. We can also make skillful use of our mind faculty to cultivate wisdom and compassion. Doing what you're doing to learn the Dharma, to apply your mind, to make sure you understand it, to apply your mind, to engage in the practice, to remember to practice, to cultivate wisdom and compassion, to free ourselves from suffering, to free ourselves from the unhelpful habits of inflicting harm on others. Taking the example of people like the Buddha and Master Shen Yan, make good use of our mind faculty. So, like I said, every moment we are experiencing sensory stimulation in the form of sight, sound, taste, touch, and thought that offers us a lot of opportunity to practice. Right, so all day long, like every time you eat something, right? Every time you see something, everything around us, or when we are walking, feeling the sensations of our body, feeling the sensations of the breeze on us, or taking a shower, feeling sensations, tactile sensations of water on us. Lots of opportunity to practice, to recognize, to recognize their emptiness, that they are the coming together of causes and conditions. Everything else, sense organs, sense faculty, and the sense objects, and sense objects themselves are also the coming together of causes and conditions to cultivate right view, cultivate, integrate right view in our life, and also to practice as we engage, as we maintain this moment to moment clear awareness, to recognize how these habitual reactivities triggered, how they show up, how they unfold, so that we can catch ourselves and not let them overwhelm us, by not feeding them, to be skillful, to exercise restraint, use our wisdom to limit exposure of harmful, addictive stimuli as a way to help us work with, recognize our vexations, and to reduce, let them go. And when vexations don't arise, suffering does not arise. And that is what the Buddha taught in the, this part of the Four Noble Truths. Thank you.